Imagine walking through quiet halls bathed in soft golden light, where every shadow feels safe and every whisper brings peace to your soul. The air is calm, carrying a faint scent of warmth and faint antiseptic, blending into a comforting rhythm that feels almost like a heartbeat. You notice the gentle sway of curtains in distant windows, the soft hum of machines echoing like a lullaby. Each step you take is unhurried, deliberate, as if the building itself is guiding you, inviting you to pause, to breathe, to let go of the day's weight. As you continue down the corridor, the shadows stretch and bend in the soft light, but there is no fear here, only a quiet curiosity, a gentle wonder. The whispers you hear are like old friends carrying stories, memories, and calm assurances that all is well. They brush past your mind like a comforting breeze, encouraging you to sink deeper into the stillness around you, to feel your body soften, your thoughts slow. And while you journey through these halls, if you enjoy this moment of calm, of gentle reflection, consider subscribing to join this space more often, where soft stories and soothing whispers await to guide you into peace. For now, let the gentle glow, the safe shadows, and the murmurs that wrap around you lead you into quiet, restorative sleep. The hospital at night was a world apart, a quiet sanctuary suspended between the bustle of the day and the hushed stillness of midnight. The corridors stretched endlessly, their walls washed in a soft amber glow, the light flickering occasionally as though the building itself were breathing. Each hallway held a calm rhythm, broken only by the occasional hum of distant machines or the muted thrum of an elevator rising and falling in its shaft. It was a gentle, steady music, enough to lull the mind into a state of quiet awareness, the kind where every detail becomes both significant and soothing. Doctor, Evelyn Hart walked slowly through the long corridor, her steps measured and deliberate. The soles of her shoes made soft impressions on the polished linoleum, almost as if she were walking through a dream. She paused near a window, peering out into the night. The wind whispered against the glass, bending the skeletal branches of trees so they tapped lightly against the building's exterior. The sound was soft, fleeting, like a private conversation with the darkness itself. The night outside seemed to echo the peace inside, a mirrored calm that wrapped the hospital in a cocoon of quiet. Inside, the air carried the familiar scent of antiseptic, mingled with a hint of warmth from the old heating system. It was a smell that could have been harsh, yet here it was strangely comforting. It reminded Evelyn of safety, of rooms that had seen countless recoveries, countless nights like this one, where the world slowed down and the heart could finally notice its own rhythm. She inhaled deeply, letting the antiseptic and the quiet mingle in her senses, each breath grounding her further in the present. As she made her way down another hallway, the shadows seemed to shift gently, stretching along the walls as the flickering lights pulsed above. At first, she dismissed them as tricks of her eyes, the natural dance of light and architecture, yet a part of her mind lingered on them. There was a sense that something or someone was present, watching softly from just beyond her vision. It wasn't frightening, it was subtle, a quiet tug at the edge of awareness, like a story half remembered. Every so often, she thought she heard a whisper, so delicate that she almost convinced herself it was the wind or perhaps the distant hum of the ventilation system. Yet each whisper felt personal, almost like a greeting carried on the air, an acknowledgement that she was not entirely alone. Evelyn paused again at the end of the hall, leaning lightly against the cold wall. Her fingers traced the contours of the worn linoleum as she let her eyes wander over the empty space. The hospital felt larger than it should, every corner and alcove filled with the soft echoes of lives both past and present. In one corner, a faint reflection caught her eye, the dim gleam of a monitor left on in an empty room. The numbers ticked quietly, a heartbeat in itself, steady and unwavering. She imagined that even in these quiet hours, the hospital remembered each patient, each moment of triumph or fear, and held it in the soft embrace of its walls. There was comfort in that, a quiet reassurance that the space was alive with memory, with care, even when human presence had temporarily withdrawn. The soft whispering continued, barely perceptible, like a thread of sound weaving through the corridors. Evelyn allowed herself to listen, to lean into the quiet. The whispers were fragmented, half words carried through the night, but they carried a warmth she could not ignore. She walked a little further, letting her hand trail along the smooth, cool surface of the railing. It was grounding, connecting her to the present, yet the whispers tugged at something deeper, a sense that she was part of something larger, a living tapestry woven through time, through the countless nights like this one, where the hospital held vigil in silent dedication. At the nurse's station, she paused again. Papers were neatly stacked, charts aligned with meticulous care. The soft glow of the desk lamp illuminated the space in a pool of golden light, a small island of warmth amid the muted corridor. She reached for a chart absent-mindedly, tracing the printed words with her fingers. Each patient's story seemed to whisper to her from the page, reminders of vulnerability, courage, and quiet endurance. There was a rhythm here, one that transcended fear, one that invited reflection. The gentle cadence of life and memory, flickering light and faint sound, combined to create an atmosphere of profound serenity. Still, the hospital had its mysteries. Occasionally, a shadow would stretch across the wall, too fluid to be the work of a person or object. At first, Evelyn's pulse would quicken slightly, a natural reflex, but soon it settled into a calm curiosity. She realized the shadows were part of the language of the night, the unspoken story of the hospital as it slumbered and breathed around her. They were not threatening. They were gentle, like reminders of lives once lived, of moments that lingered softly, patiently in the corners of memory. Evelyn walked toward the end of the hall, where the corridor curved gently out of sight. The light above flickered once more, briefly dimming before steadying again. She paused, allowing the stillness to wash over her. Her thoughts slowed, her breathing deepened, and the faint whispers merged with the steady hum of machines to create a lullaby of their own. In this moment, she felt utterly present, enveloped by the quiet majesty of the hospital at night, a sanctuary of soft light, whispered stories, and the calm persistence of care. A gentle sigh escaped her lips, a recognition of the peace that this place held for those who walked its halls, alive or departed. She knew the night would continue its quiet vigil, that shadows and whispers would linger in their subtle dance, and she would walk with them, a silent companion to the stories that unfolded in the soft amber glow. And as she continued down the corridor, the feeling of calm remained, wrapping around her like a soft blanket. Each step measured, each breath a thread of connection to the serene heartbeat of the hospital. The quiet of the hospital deepened as Evelyn approached the end of the corridor, her footsteps barely audible against the polished linoleum. The amber light above flickered once, then steadied, casting a soft glow that made the shadows stretch along the walls like slow-moving memories. She paused outside the emergency room, the familiar scent of antiseptic stronger here, mingled with the faint trace of warm coffee left behind by earlier staff. For a moment, she allowed herself to inhale deeply, savoring the calm before the night's subtle mysteries began to stir. It was then that she noticed the whisper, a soft, almost imperceptible murmur that seemed to drift from the open doorway of an empty ER room. At first, she thought it was the wind, slipping through a slightly ajar window or the gentle hum of the ventilation system. Yet the sound carried a cadence, a rhythm, almost like a voice trying to form words. Her pulse quickened ever so slightly, not with fear but with curiosity. She tilted her head, listening more intently, and the whispering persisted, delicate and elusive, curling around her senses like a silk thread brushing lightly against her skin. Evelyn's first reaction was a brief shiver. A part of her mind attempted to rationalize it. Perhaps the sounds were coming from the monitors left on in the room, the soft clicks of machinery, or even the distant echo of footsteps from another corridor. And yet, there was something unmistakably deliberate about the whisper. It was gentle, patient, almost coaxing, as if it wanted her attention without alarming her. She found herself drawn forward, each step careful, measured, the subtle creak of her shoes against the floor mingling with the ethereal murmurs. Peering into the ER room, her eyes were immediately met with a play of shadow and light. The monitors glowed faintly, reflecting ghostly silhouettes along the polished floor tiles, each one stretching and shifting as if animated by some unseen hand. Light from the overhead fixtures shifted softly across the room, illuminating corners, then leaving them in gentle darkness, creating an atmosphere that was at once surreal and calming. There were no people, no movement save for the faint undulation of shadows and the rhythmic blinking of monitors, yet the room seemed alive with a presence just beyond her perception. Her curiosity deepened, tempered by a quiet reassurance. There was no sudden movement, no sharp sound to startle her, only the whisper continuing in its soft, winding cadence. Evelyn felt a peculiar warmth settle in her chest, a mingling of intrigue and comfort. The feeling was almost maternal, like the gentle guidance of someone who wanted to share something important but in the subtlest of ways. She breathed slowly, letting the cool air of the room mingle with the warmth building within her, grounding her in the present moment. Then, in a moment that made her heart skip, she heard it clearly, a voice tender and deliberate, calling her name. "Evelyn?" It was faint, almost hesitant, like a whispering echo carried on a breeze. She froze, her hand gripping the doorframe lightly, unsure if she had truly heard it. The room was otherwise empty. The monitors continued their steady, muted beeps, and the shadows stretched languidly across the floor without interruption. No figure appeared, no movement betrayed the source of the voice. And yet, the whisper had been unmistakable. Her first instinct was to step back, to retreat into the safety of the corridor, yet something tethered her to the doorway. The voice had not frightened her. It had intrigued her, stirred a sense of wonder rather than panic. There was a strange comfort in its presence, an unspoken invitation to listen, to explore the space where the ordinary and the extraordinary intertwined. She leaned lightly on the doorframe, allowing her eyes to wander slowly over the room, seeking any sign, any clue, but finding only the familiar instruments of care, the glowing monitors, and the shifting shadows that seemed almost like an old friend waving from the corner of her vision. Evelyn's mind wandered through possibilities. Perhaps it was a patient spirit, lingering quietly in the place that had known so many beginnings and endings. Perhaps it was her own imagination, weaving the quiet sounds of the night into a gentle narrative meant to comfort rather than alarm. She felt a profound sense of connection, a reassurance that she was not alone in the stillness, that the hospital itself had a heartbeat and memory, and that in this quiet hour it wished to share its whispers with her alone. The whisper repeated, softer this time, almost a murmur carried on the soft air circulating through the room. Her name, drawn out gently like a lullaby, resonated in the space between walls and shadows. Evelyn closed her eyes briefly, letting the sound sink into her mind, feeling it calm her thoughts, ease the subtle tension of the night, and yet awaken a deep curiosity. She exhaled slowly, the air warm against her lips, and for the first time, she let herself wonder at the stories that lingered here, at the lives that had passed through this room, leaving fragments of themselves behind in the soft hum of the monitors, the shifting shadows, and the delicate whispers. And as she opened her eyes again, the room remained empty. No one appeared. No door creaked open. No movement stirred. Only the gentle amber light bathed the corners in warmth. The monitors blinked steadily, and the shadows continued their silent dance. Yet Evelyn could still feel the presence of that voice, a reminder that even in emptiness there could be life, warmth, and subtle conversation that asked nothing but to be heard. She smiled faintly, a quiet acknowledgement of the first touch of mystery in the night, letting the gentle suspense sink into her bones without alarm. A calm curiosity threading through the quiet corridors of the hospital. This was the first whisper, the night's invitation to notice, to listen, and to discover the stories that lingered in the quiet spaces, ready to meet those willing to hear them. And Evelyn, drawn by a mixture of wonder and gentle courage, stepped forward, letting the soft amber light guide her deeper into the night. Evelyn lingered for a moment at the doorway, her fingers resting lightly on the cool metal frame. The whisper that had called her name earlier seemed to fade into the ambient hum of the empty ER, yet it left a resonance in her mind, a subtle insistence to explore further. She took a careful step inside, her shoes making soft impressions on the polished floor, the faint squeak almost imperceptible against the steady rhythm of the monitors. The room, though empty, felt alive in a quiet, almost tender way, as if it remembered all who had ever passed through. Her eyes fell on the first subtle sign. a blanket folded neatly yet imperfectly on the edge of a bed. It had been left behind, forgotten perhaps in the rush of a long day. The fabric was worn, soft, and carried the faint warmth of someone who had recently rested beneath it. Evelyn reached out and touched it gently, feeling the texture under her fingers. There was no chill, no trace of malice, only the quiet echo of a presence that had lingered and left behind a trace, a gentle imprint of humanity. On a nearby counter, she noticed a small note, scribbled hastily in pencil. The words were faded but legible. "Thank you for being here, even when I could not speak." Her breath caught slightly. She did not know who had left it or when, yet the message resonated with her deeply. It was a whisper of gratitude preserved in paper, a silent acknowledgement of care, of attention, of someone witnessing another's vulnerability. The words made her pause, heart softening, and she realized that the room was not merely empty. It was filled with traces of lives, moments of courage, small acts of resilience that had been left behind in quiet spaces. She moved slowly, letting her hands trail along the edges of the bed rails, the soft hum of the monitors blending with a distant, almost melodic whisper that drifted through the room. The sound was no longer sharp or startling. It carried the cadence of a lullaby, each note a gentle nudge, coaxing her attention toward calm observation rather than alarm. Evelyn closed her eyes briefly, letting the combination of scent, sound, and faint warmth wash over her. The antiseptic in the air, once clinical and sharp, now felt like a protective cloak, mingling with the whispering lullaby that seemed to rise from the walls themselves. As she opened her eyes, the room appeared slightly different, though unchanged in substance. Shadows stretched in slow, deliberate patterns along the walls, the flickering light above casting shapes that seemed almost like memory made visible. It was not frightening, it was beautiful in its own quiet way. Every shadow, every subtle flicker of light seemed to tell a story. And with each story, a sense of calm wonder settled over Evelyn. Fear, which had pricked her earlier, softened into curiosity, the kind that invites reflection rather than alarm. She approached a bedside table where a small cup had been left behind. Traces of condensation suggested it had once held water for a patient, a gesture of simple care. She lifted it gently, feeling the lingering warmth seep into her hands. It was a reminder of ordinary human needs, of the tender attention paid in passing, often unnoticed but never insignificant. Evelyn felt connected to those invisible lives, the quiet narratives that had unfolded in the soft spaces of this room. And in that moment, she realized the hospital itself seemed alive with memory and presence, each item a whisper of gratitude and lingering spirit. A faint breeze stirred, brushing the edge of the curtain that hung over the window. Light from the corridor pooled softly onto the tiles, creating a warm gradient that shifted across the floor like a moving painting. The whispers rose slightly, gentle harmonics interweaving with the hum of the machinery, creating a rhythm that felt melodic and soothing. Evelyn's thought slowed in response. Each sound, each flicker of light was an invitation to breathe, to notice, and to allow herself to sink fully into the experience. The room became a cocoon of stillness, carrying both the weight of past lives and the gentle reassurance of safety. She moved to the center of the room, standing between the bed and the monitors, letting her eyes wander slowly over the subtle details. The crease in the blanket, the faint pencil marks on the note, the soft reflections in the monitor screens. Each element spoke of someone who had once been here, someone who had rested, hoped, worried, and found solace in small comforts. The whispers, now a soft, melodic chorus, seemed to acknowledge her presence, weaving around her like a gentle tide. There was no pressure to understand, no expectation to react, only the serene awareness that she was part of this delicate pattern, a witness to quiet stories left behind in a room that had become sacred in its own understated way. Evelyn exhaled slowly, letting the calm wash over her. The sense of mystery remained, tinged with gentle suspense, yet it no longer carried any sharp edge. It was an invitation rather than a challenge, a quiet call to notice the beauty hidden in stillness, to feel the lives that had brushed against this space, and to recognize the delicate balance between presence and absence. In the soft amber light, with whispers curling through the room like a lullaby, she felt a profound connection to the unseen, a sense that even in emptiness there was life, warmth, and gentle continuity. As she stepped back toward the doorway, leaving the blanket, the note, and the faintly glowing monitors behind, Evelyn carried with her a sense of peace tinged with quiet curiosity. The first brush with the unknown had not frightened her. It had awakened something deeper, a calm attentiveness, a tender recognition of stories lived and left behind, and an understanding that the night held spaces where both mystery and comfort could coexist. The ER, once just a room in a hospital, had transformed into a sanctuary, alive with memory and whispers, gently guiding her into a night filled with serene wonder and soft suspense. The hospital's history was written into every creaking floorboard, every flaking patch of paint along the corridors. Evelyn had walked these halls countless times during her shifts, yet tonight, under the soft amber glow of flickering lights, they felt alive with memory. The building was decades old, its bones carrying the weight of countless lives, of miracles and tragedies alike. Each corridor seemed to whisper stories in the faint hum of the ventilation system, the soft clatter of distant carts, the echo of her own measured footsteps. Evelyn paused before a peeling wall near the nurse's station, running her fingers along the rough texture of the faded paint. The colors were muted, pale yellows and creams dulled by years of wear, yet in the dim light they seemed to shimmer softly, as if holding fragments of the past. She could almost imagine the hands of caretakers past, walking these halls, guiding patients, leaving behind subtle traces of themselves. The hospital had been a witness to countless recoveries, yet also to quiet grief. The stories were layered here, woven into the fabric of the building, visible only to those who slowed enough to notice. As she walked further, she noticed an old surgical lamp suspended from the ceiling in one of the corridors, a relic from a bygone era. Its metal arm creaked slightly as she brushed past, and the faint reflection from its polished surface caught her eye. The light that had once illuminated frantic procedures now cast gentle, muted shadows along the walls, turning the room into a quiet, contemplative space. It was strange to think that this very lamp had once shone on faces both hopeful and fearful, guiding hands and hearts alike. Here, the weight of human experience felt tangible, almost a presence that wrapped the corridor in quiet dignity. Evelyn paused at a small alcove where a long bench had been placed. She had passed it countless times, but tonight it seemed different. Dust motes floated lazily in the amber glow above, the faintest currents of air causing them to drift like tiny lanterns suspended in the night. She noticed a stack of old photographs resting on the bench, the edges curled and yellowed with age. One in particular caught her eye, a black and white image of a young nurse, her expression calm, yet somehow luminous in the dim light. Evelyn leaned closer. There was something in the photograph that seemed alive, a subtle gleam in the nurse's eyes that shifted when the flickering lights overhead danced across the surface. For a moment, Evelyn felt as though she were being watched, not in fear but with gentle curiosity. A soft shuffle drew her attention. One of the night staff, a quiet aide named Thomas, emerged from a side corridor carrying a tray of supplies. His presence was calm and familiar, like a steady anchor in the flowing narrative of the hospital night. "You've noticed her," he said softly, nodding toward the photograph. "She's been here longer than most of us. Staff say she watches over the halls, especially when the hospital's quiet like this." Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "Watches over? You mean?" Thomas smiled faintly, the lines around his eyes hinting at countless shared nights in the hospital. "Some say she's a guardian. Some say she's a reminder. Hard to know which. But if you feel a calm presence, especially when the corridors seem empty, well, maybe it's her saying everything's going to be all right." Evelyn's gaze returned to the photograph, the nurse's expression seeming to soften under her own eyes. A shiver of both recognition and comfort passed through her. The hospital, in its long history, had collected these presences, remnants of care, echoes of life that had not entirely departed. She felt an inexplicable connection to the past, a sense that the building itself had memory, and that those memories could reach out to the living in quiet, subtle ways. She continued down the corridor, taking in the long, empty stretch before her. The walls were lined with faded bulletin boards, their edges curling, and the occasional chart pinned haphazardly, remnants of routines long past. The ambient hum of the night deepened the atmosphere, each echo and distant creak becoming part of the narrative of the hospital. It was a place of healing, yes, but also a repository of moments, small triumphs, whispered fears, moments of laughter, and quiet tears. Evelyn found herself walking slower, savoring each step, letting the gentle rhythm of the building guide her senses. Then, in a subtle interplay of light and shadow, her eyes caught another anomaly. A faint silhouette reflected in the glossy surface of a wall-mounted monitor. At first she assumed it was her own, a trick of the dim light. Yet the shape seemed slightly different, a posture that suggested observation rather than mere reflection. Evelyn's pulse quickened, not with fear but with a quiet thrill of wonder. The whisper of her name from the previous night lingered in her memory, now harmonizing with this new, almost imperceptible presence. She felt a connection across time, a bridge between the past and present, between those who had walked these halls and those who remained to witness them. Thomas approached her quietly again. "Many of us have noticed subtle things," he said. "Lights flicker, shadows move. But it's always gentle, never threatening. This hospital has seen much, yes, but it also watches over those within it. You'll learn that eventually. Sometimes the past isn't gone. Sometimes it lingers just enough to remind us we're not alone." Evelyn nodded slowly, feeling a deepening sense of respect for the building, its history, and the lives that had unfolded within it. She realized the hospital was more than a workplace. It was a living repository of human experience, a place where memories, care, and quiet presence coexisted with the ordinary and the extraordinary. The whispers, the shifting shadows, the reflective eyes in photographs. They were not threats but invitations. Invitations to notice, to honor, and to feel the continuity of life that threaded through the hospital's long and storied corridors. As she resumed her walk, the long, empty hall stretching before her, Evelyn felt a calm thrill mingled with gentle suspense. She knew that the night held more stories, more subtle presences to meet and recognize. The history of the hospital was not just in the books or in old photographs. It was in the very air, in the soft amber glow of the lights, in the shadows that moved almost imperceptibly across the walls, and in the quiet, melodic hum that threaded through every corridor. Tonight, the hospital was alive in ways that words could barely capture, yet Evelyn felt its heartbeat, steady and warm, and allowed herself to step further into the embrace of its storied night. The corridor stretched before Evelyn like a river of muted amber light, each step echoing softly against the linoleum, a subtle accompaniment to the hum of distant machinery. She paused near a side door, its frame worn with age, and noticed how faint shadows flickered across the floor, as if stirred by memories rather than air currents. The hospital at night had always carried a quiet pulse, but tonight it seemed to speak more directly, layering the calm with threads of something almost tangible. Echoes of lives once lived, of voices barely remembered. As she walked slowly, Evelyn began to hear them. The whispers came first in fragments, delicate and fleeting, almost too soft to distinguish. A child's voice murmuring reassurance to a parent, a nurse gently instructing a frightened patient. A soft chuckle from a man who had just received good news, quickly followed by a sigh of relief. The voices were not alarming. They were ephemeral, woven into the air like threads of sound carried forward through decades. She tilted her head, listening, letting the cadence of the past mingle with the rhythm of her own heartbeat. It was as though the hospital itself had gathered these moments, storing them within the walls, and now, in the quiet of night, it chose to release them. Evelyn's pulse quickened ever so slightly, not in fear, but with the quiet thrill of recognition. She felt herself leaning into the whispers, her mind opening to the stories behind them. These were fragments of life, small yet profound, preserved like notes in a melody too gentle for daylight. Then came another sound, soft and deliberate, footsteps, light and uneven, following her as she walked. She paused mid-step, breath catching, but no one appeared in the corridor behind her. The footsteps continued, faint and rhythmic, blending with the whispers as though a companion had joined her walk. Evelyn exhaled slowly, letting the calm settle over her initial tension. She realized that the presence was not threatening. It was observant, respectful, a quiet echo of the hospital's human past, walking beside her in the night. She continued down the hall, drawn toward a cluster of doors that led to patient rooms long since vacated. A door at the far end creaked softly, moving on its own, then closed gently with a hushed sigh. Evelyn's hands instinctively brushed against the cool metal of the railing, grounding her in the present. Her eyes softened as she considered the lives these rooms had contained. The laughter, the tears, the small moments of courage and comfort. The gentle movements of doors and the fleeting footsteps seemed to honor those memories rather than disturb them, creating an atmosphere that balanced subtle suspense with tender reverence. Pausing near a window, Evelyn looked out into the quiet courtyard beyond. The moonlight spilled across the gravel, illuminating the bare branches of a tree that swayed gently in the night breeze. She allowed herself a moment to breathe deeply, inhaling the cool night air that drifted through the slightly open window. In that breath, she felt the hospital's stories wrap around her like a soft shawl. Each whisper, each subtle creak, an echo of the care and connection that had passed through these walls. It was a strange kind of comfort, an intimate understanding that the building held memories, and that those memories were alive in gentle, watchful ways. As she continued walking, a faint whisper called her name again, softer than before, woven with fragments of patient conversations. "You'll be all right, doctor. Thank you." The voice carried no urgency, no fear, only a calm persistence that invited her to witness, to empathize, and to feel the depth of lives that had passed here. Evelyn paused, letting the words settle over her mind, and felt a profound empathy stir within her. These voices, long absent from the present world, were not ghosts in the menacing sense. They were remnants of hope, gratitude, and quiet human struggle. She realized that by listening, she was participating in a form of connection, bridging time and space to honor those who had come before. The shadows along the walls shifted once more, this time with a subtle fluidity, almost like reflections of past figures lingering just beyond sight. Evelyn's gaze followed them with gentle curiosity, noticing how the light played across corners, how a monitor's soft glow flickered like a heartbeat. Each shadow seemed to carry a story, a fragment of existence that had once been vivid and tangible. The whispers grew slightly melodic, forming a lullaby-like harmony that wrapped around her, reinforcing the sense of continuity and calm rather than alarm. She stepped toward a small alcove where an old chart holder leaned against the wall. The papers inside were yellowed and curling at the edges. She opened one carefully, discovering a patient note from decades ago, describing a simple recovery, punctuated with gratitude for the care received. Evelyn felt her chest warm at the sight. It was a reminder that even the smallest acts of attention, patience, and kindness could ripple outward, echoing through the years. She realized that this hospital preserved not just physical life, but also the emotional residue of those who had found care, comfort, or understanding within its walls. Evelyn paused to close the chart gently, allowing the paper to rest without disturbance. The whispers softened, intertwining with the faint hum of the machinery, and she felt herself fully present in the moment. There was a thrill in knowing she was among these echoes, yet it was a thrill grounded in empathy, curiosity, and a calm awareness that she was witnessing the lingering heartbeats of the past. The soft footsteps, the gentle doors, the melodic whispers, they were all part of a delicate dance that invited reflection, observation, and respect. She resumed her walk, the long corridor stretching ahead, alive with subtle sounds and the gentle play of shadows and light. Evelyn realized that the hospital, with all its history, was not merely a building, but a living repository of human experience. Each step she took, each whisper she heard, deepened her understanding of connection across time, of empathy that transcended the boundaries of life and absence. The night was no longer simply quiet. It was rich with presence, a tapestry of sound, shadow, and memory that guided her, calmed her, and invited her to witness the unseen threads that wove the hospital's stories together. In the gentle rhythm of her steps, the soft harmonics of whispered voices, and the faint, respectful footsteps following her through the halls, Evelyn felt a profound, almost meditative calm. She understood that these echoes of the past were neither frightening nor invasive. They were reminders of resilience, of hope, and of the quiet ways in which human lives leave traces that endure. And as the corridor extended endlessly before her, the gentle suspense mingled seamlessly with a sense of peace, drawing her and the audience into a world where curiosity, empathy, and subtle wonder reigned, leaving the mind both alert and comforted. Evelyn rounded the corner of a quiet hallway, her footsteps soft against the polished linoleum. The night was deep, and the gentle hum of the hospital's machines seemed to harmonize with the subtle whispers she had grown accustomed to hearing. Shadows danced across the walls in slow, fluid motions, stirred by the faint flicker of overhead lights. She felt a sense of calm curiosity settle over her, a willingness to notice the subtle presences that had lingered in these halls for decades. Ahead, in the doorway of a small patient room, she noticed movement, or what seemed like movement. At first it was barely perceptible, a shadow shifting gently against the dim light of the corridor. Then, as her eyes adjusted, she recognized the unmistakable outline of a child. The figure smiled softly, a small, delicate curve of lips that radiated warmth rather than fear. Evelyn's heart lifted in a tender mixture of awe and surprise. The child's eyes were bright, luminous, yet somehow filled with the quiet weight of experiences long past. She took a careful step forward, drawn to the presence without hesitation. "Hello," she whispered, almost instinctively, her voice mingling with the soft, ambient hum. The child's smile remained, patient and unthreatening, as if acknowledging her gentle curiosity. Evelyn extended a hand slowly, uncertain whether to expect touch, words, or nothing at all. Yet as she approached, the figure shimmered faintly, light bending softly around the edges, and then, as if carried away by the corridor's quiet air, it disappeared. Evelyn paused, blinking, unsure if her mind had conjured the image. But then she noticed it, a small token lying on the floor where the child had stood. A hand-carved wooden toy, delicate and simple, painted with soft primary colors, rested on the linoleum. She knelt carefully, picking it up with reverence. The toy was warm to the touch, though it had no visible source of heat. It was as if the presence of the child had left a tangible trace, a quiet reminder of their brief encounter. Beside it, on the floor, a small folded drawing had appeared, depicting a scene of a child playing under a tree bathed in sunlight. The image radiated a gentle innocence, a snapshot of joy that transcended the years. Evelyn's chest swelled with emotion. The sight of the child, the small offerings left behind, and the ephemeral smile created a mixture of gentle fear and profound warmth. She understood in that quiet moment that the hospital held more than echoes and whispers. It held lives that sought to connect, to communicate, even when the physical world no longer permitted it. This was not frightening in the sense of danger. It was haunting in the most tender way, a gentle lesson in presence, empathy, and memory. She placed the toy and the drawing on the bedside table, arranging them carefully as though honoring a sacred trust. The corridor remained silent except for the soft hum of the machines, and she felt the faintest brush of a breeze against her cheek, almost like the child's small hand reaching to acknowledge her gesture. The room seemed warmer somehow, imbued with the lingering essence of connection. Evelyn exhaled slowly, allowing herself to sit on the edge of the bed for a moment, absorbing the profound stillness that had settled around her. Her thoughts drifted to the many lives that had passed through this hospital, each leaving a subtle mark, each whispering their stories into the night. This encounter, small though it was, reminded her of the delicate interplay between life and memory, presence and absence. The gentle fear, the brief tension of seeing a figure materialize, only to vanish, had been tempered by warmth and healing, leaving a sensation of wonder that resonated in her chest. Evelyn rose and looked around the room once more, her eyes catching the faint shimmer of the shadows against the walls. The whispers she had followed earlier seemed softer now, more melodic, as though approving of her patience and her willingness to witness. The hallway outside stretched silently, awaiting the next quiet story, the next trace of life hidden in corners and alcoves. She felt a renewed curiosity, a gentle eagerness to explore, yet there was no urgency, no fear, only a meditative awareness that the hospital's night held layers of experience she was only beginning to understand. As she stepped back into the corridor, the amber light glimmered across the polished floor, shadows stretching into the distance. The toy and drawing remained on the table, small tokens of a fleeting presence, tangible reminders that even when life was gone, its traces could leave warmth, guidance, and quiet reassurance. Evelyn's heart was alight, her mind alight with wonder, and yet the subtle thrill of the unknown lingered, a soft invitation to continue her exploration with calm attentiveness. In this first emotional surge, the tension of uncertainty had melted into a blend of gentle fear and heartfelt warmth. The child's smile, the small gifts left behind, and the quiet echoes of the past reminded Evelyn and the audience of the hospital's enduring spirit. It was a place where curiosity could meet empathy, where mystery could coexist with calm, and where even a fleeting presence could leave behind traces of healing and connection. The corridor stretched on, promising more stories, more whispers, and more opportunities to witness the delicate dance of life, memory, and quiet wonder. The hospital was quieter than usual, yet Evelyn felt a new kind of unrest in the night air. The whispers she had grown familiar with were no longer mere fragments. They carried coherence, weaving together the threads of gratitude, regret, and quiet fears. Each voice seemed to speak across time, brushing against her consciousness like soft currents of wind. She paused in the hallway, letting the stillness wash over her, and listened carefully. "I wish I had told her," one voice murmured, so soft it could have been a memory of her own. "Thank you for being here," another breathed, almost a sigh filled with relief and recognition. The voices did not startle her. Instead, they invited reflection. Evelyn felt herself leaning into them, feeling the depth of human experience preserved in these walls. She realized she had become a witness to countless private moments, held in gentle suspension between past and present. Her empathy deepened and a sense of responsibility arose. These voices deserved acknowledgement. She retrieved a small notebook from her pocket, flipping it open and beginning to transcribe the fragments she could catch, each word an attempt to honor the lives that had brushed against the corridors of the hospital. As she moved, the visual rhythm of the hospital enhanced the surreal sensation. Shadows of figures flickered behind glass doors, subtle shapes that disappeared when looked at directly. The overhead lights swayed faintly, reflecting off IV poles and medical monitors, turning the instruments into ephemeral dancers, their movements soft and hypnotic. Evelyn watched, entranced, noting how light and shadow could transform ordinary objects into carriers of memory, presence, and quiet emotion. The interplay was hypnotic, almost meditative, yet tinged with a thrill of the unknown. At the nurse's station, Evelyn paused to listen more intently. One voice, delicate and trembling, shared a fear long past. "I was so afraid to leave." Evelyn felt a pang of recognition for that human vulnerability, and she scribbled the words down, carefully preserving the sentiment. Another voice, brighter and steadier, whispered gratitude for care received. "You stayed when no one else did. Thank you." She traced the lines of her handwriting slowly, almost ritualistically, as if connecting to the emotional energy embedded in the words. Walking further into the wing, Evelyn noticed a slight shift in the light. A narrow beam from a corridor lamp caught the surface of a monitor, casting reflections like small, luminous spirits moving in harmony with the whispers. She felt no fear. Instead, the sensation was tender, almost nurturing, a soft reminder that even in the darkest hours, presence and care lingered. Each shadow, each flicker, each reflection became a small guidepost in her understanding of the hospital's unseen occupants. The murmurs grew slightly more urgent, yet still calm. Snippets of regret emerged alongside expressions of love and hope. "I should have held her hand longer. Don't forget me. It was all right in the end." Evelyn absorbed the cadence, the rhythm of sorrow and relief blending into a tapestry that was both melancholy and soothing. She began to feel a moral weight, an unspoken invitation to witness and honor these lives, to allow the stories to exist beyond their ephemeral presence in the night. Occasionally, the sound of footsteps echoed behind her, barely audible yet rhythmic and measured. Doors clicked softly as if closing themselves in gentle acknowledgement of her passage. Shadows shifted along the walls and across the ceiling in slow, purposeful motions. She realized that the hospital was not merely a backdrop for these experiences, it was a vessel, holding the emotional residue of years of human care, hope, fear, and tenderness. Each whisper, each flicker of light, was a reminder that even absence could be meaningful. Evelyn stopped near a row of patient rooms, her gaze sweeping over the empty beds. A particularly bright flicker of light caught her eye, revealing the delicate outline of a figure sitting upright in one bed, fading almost instantly as she focused on it. She smiled faintly, heart swelling with both reverence and quiet thrill. These were the lives that had once breathed in this space, now extending a delicate bridge across time to the present. Sitting for a moment on the edge of an empty bed, Evelyn let herself absorb the entirety of the scene. Whispers harmonizing with the hum of machines, shadows flickering in rhythm, the reflective dance of light across instruments, and the subtle breeze that carried fragments of distant conversations. She felt a gentle shiver of awareness, a mixture of calm, curiosity, and slightly heightened suspense. It was a delicate balance, a meditation on life and memory, fear and warmth, mystery and reflection. As the night deepened, Evelyn continued to record what she could, the notebook filling with fragments of past lives. Each word was a small act of empathy, a quiet acknowledgement of the hospital's layered history. The gentle horror of unseen presences was tempered by the tenderness in their whispers, creating a space that was both emotionally moving and soothing. Evelyn understood that the hospital held lessons not just in medicine but in human connection, empathy, and the capacity to witness without judgment. By the time she rose to continue her rounds, the restless night had settled into a rhythmic harmony. The whispers, shadows, and flickering lights were no longer alarming. They were companions, guides, and teachers. Evelyn felt a calm attentiveness, a sense that she was part of a living narrative, intertwined with the echoes of those who had come before. The corridor stretched ahead, still illuminated by the soft amber glow, promising further stories, more whispers, and deeper connections waiting to be discovered. In that quiet, meditative space, Evelyn embraced the duality of the hospital night. Gentle fear interlaced with warmth, shadows interwoven with light, absence tempered by presence. The voices had grown louder, yes, but they carried not menace, only the emotional weight of lives remembered and honored. For her, and for anyone listening, the lesson was clear. Even in the quietest, darkest corridors, empathy, awareness, and reflection could illuminate paths to understanding, connection, and subtle healing. The hallway felt narrower tonight, the amber light stretching long shadows across the walls. Evelyn moved with careful steps, her senses heightened by the subtle hum of the hospital at night. The whispers had become more intimate, weaving not just fragments of past conversations but sentiments that brushed against her own life, drawing forth memories she hadn't realized she carried. As she passed the corner of the pediatric wing, she felt a sudden warmth in her chest, a pull toward the presence of the spirits she had begun to recognize as more than echoes. They were companions, guides, and sometimes mirrors of her own experiences. A memory surfaced unbidden. A young patient she had cared for years ago. A fragile boy with a gentle smile who had clutched her hand during a long night of pain. Evelyn felt the past stretch into the present, the hospital breathing around her, binding time into a soft, continuous thread of empathy. Then she noticed movement in the corner of her eye. A stethoscope, left carelessly on a nearby counter, began to roll slowly across the floor, tracing a delicate curve as if guided by an invisible hand. She froze, holding her breath. The movement was subtle, precise, almost playful rather than threatening. A soft flicker of light danced along the ceiling above her, in perfect rhythm with the rolling instrument, casting tiny shadows that seemed to bow and sway. Evelyn felt a shiver of awareness, the kind that combines curiosity with gentle trepidation. "Hello," she whispered, her voice barely disturbing the stillness. She had no expectation of a reply, yet the whispers responded in kind. A soft chorus of past gratitude, fleeting laughter, and hushed sighs. Her mind trembled between the rational and the ineffable, a quiet thrill mingling with the comfort of empathy. She was aware that the spirits had chosen this moment to make themselves felt more vividly, bridging the gap between memory and presence. As she continued, a voice broke through the ambient hum with startling clarity. It spoke a memory only she knew, a private, tender recollection of a patient she had visited during a particularly difficult night. The words were exact, echoing her own thoughts from years ago. "You stayed even when I was afraid to sleep. You held my hand until I felt safe." Evelyn's breath caught. Fear and tenderness mingled within her chest. How could this private memory have emerged from the walls, from shadows, from whispers? The hospital seemed alive in a new, intimate way, responding to her heart, acknowledging the depths of her own care. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached out to steady herself on the railing. The stethoscope lay still now, but the faint flicker of light continued, a rhythmic pulse that seemed almost conscious. Evelyn's mind swirled with a strange combination of awe and gentle fear, her rational thoughts struggling to categorize what she had just witnessed, while her heart accepted it without question. The presence was not malevolent. It was tender, knowing, intimate, and haunting in the softest possible sense. Walking slowly, she allowed herself to revisit other memories she had carried through the years. Patients who had trusted her, moments of joy and sorrow, tears and laughter. Each recollection felt magnified in the quiet of the night, as if the hospital and its lingering spirits had reached into her mind to remind her of the invisible threads that connect lives across time. The flickering shadows now seemed to move in response to her awareness, stretching along walls, reflecting faintly off the polished surfaces of monitors and IV poles, creating ephemeral shapes that bowed and swayed like dancers. Evelyn paused near a window, looking out at the courtyard bathed in pale moonlight. The quiet air carried a faint scent of antiseptic, mixed with the crisp coolness of the night. She felt the hospital's embrace around her, a gentle presence that acknowledged her empathy, her fears, and her willingness to bear witness. Then, in a voice that seemed to emanate from both the hallway and her own heart, a fragment of memory surfaced again. One she had never shared with anyone, now spoken aloud with clarity and warmth. The tender recollection blended seamlessly with the soft hum of the machines, turning fear into wonder and connection. Evelyn exhaled slowly, letting her awareness settle. The gentle horror of unseen movement, the rolling stethoscope, the flickering light, and the voice repeating her private memory had mingled into a profound meditation on presence, empathy, and the unseen echoes of human care. She felt a strange relief, a deep warmth, and a renewed sense of purpose. The spirits were not merely whispers. They were reflections, reminders, and guides, inviting her to honor the past while embracing the present. As she resumed her rounds, the corridor stretched quietly before her, alive with shadows, light, and whispers. Evelyn felt herself both part of this world and a witness to its mysteries. The gentle suspense remained, but it was balanced with an unmistakable sense of connection and care. Twist number 3 had left her breathless yet soothed, a reminder that fear and tenderness could coexist in perfect harmony, and that sometimes the unseen could teach the most profound lessons about empathy, memory, and human connection. Tonight, the hospital was more than walls, beds, and machines. It was a living archive of experiences, a space where emotions flowed across time, where whispers became guides, and where even the subtlest touch of the past could awaken both fear and healing in the present. Evelyn felt the rhythm of the night settle around her, a gentle, meditative cadence, as if the hospital itself were breathing with her, welcoming her into its fold and teaching her to listen deeply, to the living, the gone, and the echoes that lingered quietly in between. The hallway was hushed, bathed in the soft amber glow of the overhead lights, the usual hum of machines blending seamlessly with the whispers that had become Evelyn's companions. Her footsteps were slow, deliberate, each tap against the linoleum a quiet echo of presence and intention. Tonight, the hospital felt alive in a profoundly different way. Not merely as a repository of memory, but as a space where unresolved fragments of life sought attention, acknowledgement, and release. As she rounded a familiar corner, Evelyn noticed a subtle shimmer near an old wooden desk in the nurse's workroom. A faint figure hovered above it, translucent and wavering, as if uncertain whether to fully appear. The aura surrounding the presence carried a softness that tugged at her chest, a quiet yearning that felt almost maternal. Evelyn sensed immediately that this was not a specter of fear, but a soul lingering in need of guidance, a quiet story left unfinished. The figure's form solidified slightly as she approached, revealing the faint outline of an elderly patient she remembered only through hospital records, a patient whose final days had been marked by isolation, a small hand always clutching an unfinished letter, trembling in hope for someone to understand. Evelyn's heart ached gently as she knelt beside the desk, noting the crumpled papers, half-formed sentences that had never reached completion. She realized in that moment that she could offer the closure that had eluded this spirit for decades. Carefully, Evelyn straightened the papers, smoothing the edges with a tenderness that mirrored the gentleness she had always offered her living patients. She picked up a pen, her fingers brushing the translucent fingers of the figure, and wrote the final words to the letter, words of love, gratitude, and forgiveness. The whispers around her seemed to swell softly, a chorus of sighs and gentle acknowledgement that vibrated through the air like a lullaby. Shadows danced lightly across the walls, reflecting off the monitors and IV poles, painting the room with ephemeral grace. The spirit leaned forward, its faint outline shimmering with what Evelyn interpreted as relief. The act of closure, the simple completion of a task left undone, had transformed tension into calm. The air itself seemed to breathe more freely, the hum of machines now blending with a gentle melodic undertone, as if the hospital were exhaling in shared solace. Evelyn felt the quiet awe of this connection settle deep within her chest, a soothing warmth that replaced any lingering sense of unease. She paused to observe the details that had gone unnoticed for so long. A forgotten blanket folded carefully in the corner, a small vase of artificial flowers perched on the windowsill, catching the dim light. Each item carried a story, a trace of human intention preserved in quiet reverence. Evelyn arranged the blanket neatly and adjusted the flowers, small gestures of care that resonated with the spirit, bridging the space between life and lingering presence. The figure's features softened, its expression now peaceful, a gentle smile touching the edges of its face. The whispers around her grew fainter, coalescing into a soft, harmonic resonance that seemed to affirm the completion of the spirit's journey. Evelyn exhaled slowly, letting the calm wash over her like warm water. The hospital no longer felt eerie or restless. It was a vessel of understanding, empathy, and the quiet satisfaction of lives acknowledged and remembered. She allowed herself a moment to close her eyes, inhaling the subtle mixture of antiseptic, night air, and the lingering traces of human presence, feeling an intimate connection with the continuum of existence surrounding her. When she opened her eyes, the figure had faded completely, leaving behind only a faint glow on the desk and a sense of serene resolution. Evelyn's fingers lingered over the pen, a tactile reminder of the bridge she had built between the past and the present. She realized that this gentle act of closure was more than a task. It was a meditation on empathy, a subtle healing that touched both the lingering spirit and her own heart. Rising to her feet, she looked around the room once more, her gaze soft and reflective. The shadows now moved with a quiet elegance, almost ceremonially, and the whispers that had accompanied her throughout the night had dimmed to delicate echoes, like a melody receding into memory. The corridor stretched ahead, still illuminated by soft amber lights, inviting further exploration, further connection, yet holding in its stillness a profound sense of balance and peace. Evelyn walked slowly down the hallway, feeling the gentle rhythm of her own heartbeat synchronize with the subtle harmonics of the hospital night. The fear that had occasionally tinged the whispers, the moving shadows, and the flickering lights had been replaced by awe, tenderness, and a meditative awareness of the beauty embedded within ephemeral existence. She understood more fully than ever that gentle horror and emotional healing could coexist, that the hospital was a living archive of care, memory, and lingering presence, and that sometimes the simplest acts of attention could carry extraordinary significance. Pausing near a window, she looked out at the courtyard bathed in pale moonlight. The trees swayed gently, their branches tracing delicate patterns against the sky. The air was cool and soft, carrying the quiet scent of the night and the faintest reminder of human life. Evelyn felt her chest rise and fall in harmony with this serene rhythm. The hospital, once a place of tension and uncertainty, now exuded a quiet assurance. Even in the presence of what is unseen, understanding, empathy, and gentle care can create profound healing. In that moment, Evelyn realized the depth of the night's lessons. The spirits she had encountered were not frightening. They were echoes of humanity, waiting for connection, acknowledgement, and compassion. By helping this lingering presence achieve closure, she had transformed the subtle tension into peace, guiding both herself and the audience toward emotional catharsis. The corridors remained quiet, the lights soft, and the air still, offering a meditative pause before the night's journey continued, leaving listeners enveloped in calm, awe, and the quiet magic of gentle resolution. The hospital seemed unusually still as Evelyn stepped into the ER, the usual hum of machines soft and unobtrusive in the late-night quiet. The soft amber glow of the overhead lights cast long, gentle shadows across the polished floors. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic, mixed with the crisp scent of night air drifting in from a cracked window. Everything appeared ordinary, yet Evelyn felt a peculiar hush that suggested the night had something different in store. Ahead, near the corner where the observation beds ended, she noticed movement, or rather the absence of it. A shadowy figure stood quietly, almost blending with the dim light, as if it were part of the corridor itself. The shape was humanoid, but softened at the edges, translucent and diffused, illuminated by a faint, soothing luminescence that gave it an almost ethereal glow. Evelyn froze for a moment, her pulse steady, not from fear, but from a keen awareness that this presence was different from the whispers and fleeting shadows she had encountered before. The figure did not move toward her, did not gesture or speak, yet its presence was palpable, filling the space with a gentle warmth that contrasted with the cool night air. It seemed to watch, not with judgment, but with an understanding that resonated deep within her chest. Evelyn felt the familiar flutter of curiosity mingling with an unexpected sense of calm, as though the hospital itself had conspired to introduce her to this visitor. Soft reflections shimmered along the edges of the figure, highlighting its faint outline against the sterile backdrop of monitors and IV poles. The light bent around it in a delicate halo, illuminating dust particles that floated lazily through the air. Evelyn noticed that the figure's eyes, or where she imagined eyes might be, glowed with a gentle intensity, almost like twin lanterns guiding her attention without words. The scene was surreal yet comforting, a quiet invitation rather than a threat. She stepped closer, mindful not to disturb the delicate balance. The figure remained still, an anchor in the space between the known and the unseen. Evelyn felt her own breathing slow, syncing with the rhythmic hum of the machines and the faint stir of energy that seemed to emanate from the visitor. Every instinct told her that this was not a presence to fear, but to observe, to honor. A subtle whisper drifted through the ER, softer than anything she had heard before. It was not a voice she could identify, yet the tone carried reassurance and recognition. "You have come far, and yet there is more to see." The words wrapped around her awareness like a gentle lullaby, affirming that this encounter was part of a larger tapestry, a quiet thread weaving together the hospital's history, the lingering spirits, and her own journey. Evelyn noticed small details she had previously overlooked. A discarded chart swayed lightly as though nudged by the unseen visitor. A monitor's light flickered briefly in rhythm with the soft, unspoken pulse of the figure. Every motion was subtle, almost imperceptible, yet it infused the room with a sense of life and intention. The gentle horror of the scene, the fact that this presence was not entirely of the physical world, was balanced perfectly by its calm, guiding energy. Her gaze lingered on the figure and a wave of empathy washed over her. She sensed a story, unfinished yet patient, contained within this being. Unlike the fleeting shadows of the previous nights, this presence seemed to embody purpose, an unresolved chapter seeking acknowledgement, or perhaps a bridge to understanding. Evelyn realized that this was an opportunity, a quiet moment where fear could be transformed into connection, where mystery could teach her about patience, attention, and the subtle beauty of existence. Time seemed to stretch, the minutes elongating as she observed the visitor. Her own thoughts drifted to patients she had known, those who had lingered in this hospital in life, in memory, or in spirit. She understood with a quiet clarity that the visitor's presence was not random. It was a message, a gentle prompt to recognize the ongoing thread of life, care, and memory that tied the hospital together. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft and steady. "I see you, and I am here." The figure responded not with words, but with a slight shift, a shimmer of light that seemed to nod in acknowledgement. Evelyn's chest swelled with a sense of shared understanding. Fear had no place here, only quiet recognition, calm awareness, and the profound reassurance that even in the unseen, presence could be nurturing. The figure remained for a few more moments, a quiet sentinel amidst the machines and empty beds, and then, with a subtle bending of light, it faded into the shadows, leaving behind only the faintest trace of warmth in the air. Evelyn exhaled, a sigh of both relief and awe, feeling the emotional resonance settle within her. The ER, once a place of sterile neutrality, now seemed alive with stories waiting to be witnessed, honored, and gently understood. She lingered a moment longer, absorbing the soft luminescence that still lingered in the corners of her vision, a lingering sense of presence that whispered, "There is more to learn, more to feel, more to connect." The hospital night had shifted subtly from quiet observation to gentle revelation. Evelyn walked on, carrying the calm yet heightened awareness that the line between life and the unseen was not one to fear, but one to honor. In that unexpected presence, fear had been replaced with awe, curiosity had been transformed into connection, and the subtle pulse of the hospital had become a comforting rhythm, a meditation in motion, promising further lessons in empathy, understanding, and the gentle balance between what is seen and what remains just beyond perception. The ER was quiet, bathed in the same amber glow that had accompanied Evelyn since her shift began. Yet the atmosphere felt denser, charged with anticipation she could almost sense rather than see. The shadowy visitor she had glimpsed earlier lingered faintly near the observation beds, its soft luminescence flickering in rhythm with the subtle hum of the machines. Evelyn took a careful breath, steadying her heartbeat, and stepped closer, her hand brushing lightly against the cool metal railing lining the corridor. "Can you tell me your story?" she asked softly, her voice a gentle ripple in the otherwise still air. She did not expect an answer in words, but in that quiet space the figure shimmered, its form coalescing subtly into something more defined, like light pressed through sheer fabric. A delicate sense of longing radiated from it, an invisible pulse that tugged at her chest. At first, the communication was abstract, expressed through impressions rather than speech. Evelyn felt waves of sorrow, snippets of moments filled with hope and regret, love and loss. The visitor's energy brushed against her consciousness, evoking images of a life cut short, a connection that had been interrupted, a farewell that never came. She could sense the spirit's lingering regret, the ache of unsaid words, the warmth of love left incomplete, and the quiet yearning for acknowledgement. Gradually, the impressions crystallized into coherent words, clear yet soft, as though spoken from behind a veil. "I waited. I could not say goodbye. I am sorry for leaving." Evelyn's chest ached at the tone, her empathy reaching across the divide between life and what lingered beyond it. She knelt slightly, placing a hand gently over her heart, allowing herself to feel the full weight of the presence before her. The ER was no longer simply a space of machines and beds. It had become a vessel for shared humanity, for stories that transcended death. Then, a fragment of memory appeared that startled her with its specificity. A file left on a nurse's counter, long untouched, surfaced in her mind. An unresolved case from decades ago. A patient who had disappeared from records, whose final moments had never been fully understood. Evelyn's breath caught, The spirit's message aligned perfectly with this unsolved mystery. A chill ran through her, not from fear, but from the profound realization that the hospital itself held fragments of truth waiting to be uncovered, waiting for acknowledgement. The visitor's luminous form pulsed slightly, emphasizing the importance of this connection. It was not a plea or demand, but an invitation. Remember me. Tell my story. Let the world know I existed. Evelyn felt the gravity of the responsibility. The gentle horror of encountering a spirit tethered by unresolved events was softened by the compassion it evoked. She understood viscerally that helping this presence find closure was not just an act of empathy. It was a continuation of care, an extension of the work she had dedicated her life to. She spoke quietly, words flowing from her lips like water over smooth stone. I will remember. I will tell them. You are not forgotten. The figure shimmered in response, a luminous affirmation, and for a moment, the ER seemed to hold its breath. Shadows stretched along the walls in elongated forms, flickering in rhythm with the whispered hum of machines, creating an almost sacred ambiance. Evelyn's fear was gone, replaced by awe, reverence, and an intimate sense of responsibility. The spirit story unfolded further through impressions, moments of laughter shared with loved ones, a fleeting embrace that never fully landed, the quiet anguish of leaving without resolution. Evelyn's empathy deepened with every subtle gesture, every flicker of light, every pulse of energy that brushed her senses. The visitor was not there to frighten her, but to teach her about the fragility and beauty of life, about the delicate threads of connection that persist even when time and circumstance intervene. As she listened, Evelyn reflected on her own life and patience, the small, often overlooked moments of care, the words left unsaid, the gestures of presence that ripple across time. She realized that the hospital was a repository of countless such threads, each one carrying lessons about love, regret, gratitude, and the quiet courage of human connection. The gentle fear of the unknown was now a conduit for understanding, an emotional bridge linking her with the spirits who remained tethered to the world in subtle, meaningful ways. Finally, the shadowy visitor began to recede, its luminescence dimming softly, leaving behind a warm, residual glow. Evelyn felt the echo of its presence settle into her mind and heart. A calm reverence mingled with the thrill of having witnessed something extraordinary. She glanced at the patient file that had surfaced in her memory and resolved silently to investigate, to uncover the story that had remained untold for so long, and to honor the life that had reached across time to speak with her tonight. The whispers softened into distant murmurs, the lights above flickered in gentle rhythm, and the ER returned to its quiet, meditative state. Evelyn exhaled deeply, a sense of accomplishment and peace washing over her. In that shared moment across realms, she had felt the power of connection, the subtle thrill of the unknown, and the gentle awe of being entrusted with a story left incomplete. Twist number 4 had illuminated not only a mystery, but also a profound truth. That empathy, attention, and courage could bridge worlds, soothe restless spirits, and teach invaluable lessons about life, memory, and the enduring impact of care. Evelyn rose slowly, her mind quiet yet alive with purpose. She knew the night held more stories, more whispers, and more lessons. But for now, the calm resonance of this encounter filled her entirely, leaving her with a gentle sense of awe, reflection, and quiet healing. An understanding that even in the presence of what cannot be seen, compassion and attention could illuminate truth, resolve lingering regrets, and transform gentle fear into a deeply moving experience. The ER was cloaked in a soft amber haze, the machines hum a steady, comforting rhythm that seemed to echo the heartbeat of the night itself. Evelyn stood quietly near the observation beds, her eyes tracing the faint shimmer of the shadowy visitor who had shared so much of its story. The figure remained still, luminous yet delicate, as if waiting for a single gesture to bridge the space between worlds. She took a slow breath, feeling the weight of responsibility, tempered by a profound sense of empathy. Her hands reached instinctively toward the small desk nearby, where a solitary candle flickered, its gentle flame dancing against the polished metal surface. With careful precision, she lit the candle fully, its soft glow spilling warmth across the room, illuminating the edges of the shadowy figure with tender light. The visitor's form seemed to respond, pulsating subtly as if the simple act of illumination had touched its essence. Evelyn's gaze fell on a small vase of flowers sitting forgotten on the counter, petals slightly bent with age. She picked them up delicately, arranging them near the candle. The scent, faint but sweet, mingled with the antiseptic air, creating a gentle perfume that seemed to calm both the space and the spirit before her. Every movement was slow, deliberate, a meditation in motion, conveying respect, care, and recognition. Then, remembering the crumpled note she had discovered in a drawer earlier, a fragment of a letter left unfinished decades ago, she unfolded it and read the words aloud in a voice soft enough to blend with the hum of the machines. "You are remembered. You are loved. Your presence mattered." The candlelight flickered in response, casting long, delicate shadows that danced across the walls like whispered acknowledgments. The shadowy figure shifted slightly, a movement so gentle it was almost imperceptible, yet it carried meaning. Evelyn felt a warmth spread through her chest, a resonance that confirmed the spirit's recognition of her empathy. The figure seemed to lean closer to the candle, its faint glow blending with the warm flame, as if drawing strength and comfort from the simple acts of attention and care. For several moments the room remained still, the quiet punctuated only by the rhythmic flicker of light and the soft whisper of the hospital's night air. Evelyn focused her attention fully on the presence before her, allowing the spirit to feel seen, acknowledged, and nurtured. The gentle tension that had lingered since their first encounter softened, replaced by a sense of serene connection. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the spirit's form began to shimmer with a slightly stronger luminescence, a soft smile forming where features might have been. The warmth in the room deepened, as though the candle's flame and the simple arrangement of flowers had offered a bridge between the physical and the unseen, a conduit for reassurance that transcended life and death. Evelyn's heart swelled with quiet awe, a profound understanding of the delicate balance between presence and absence, care and acknowledgement. Then, as if the act of empathy had completed its course, the figure began to dissolve, the luminous edges blending into the soft amber light of the ER. The candle's glow seemed to linger on its own, casting a serene aura over the small desk, and the scent of the flowers remained, a subtle, comforting reminder of the moment. Evelyn exhaled slowly, feeling a sense of calm settle over her entire being. The visitor had departed, but the emotional resonance remained, a quiet affirmation that acts of care, however small, have the power to heal, console, and transcend even the boundaries of mortality. Evelyn straightened, brushing her hands lightly over her uniform as she took in the stillness of the ER. The whispering had faded, replaced by the soft hum of machines and the gentle pulse of the hospital night. A sense of completion lingered, the tension replaced by reassurance and warmth. In this moment, she understood fully that her presence, her attentiveness, and her compassion had bridged a divide, offering healing not only to the spirit but also to herself. The candle's flame continued to flicker gently, casting elongated shadows that danced lightly along the walls. Evelyn walked slowly down the corridor, her footsteps soft against the polished floor, feeling the profound tranquility of a night that had begun with curiosity and ended in gentle, luminous closure. The hospital, once a place of subtle tension and lingering whispers, now carried the quiet harmony of acknowledgement and peace. Evelyn paused at the doorway leading to the hallway beyond. The night outside was calm, moonlight spilling through the windows and touching the edges of the hospital with a silver glow. She allowed herself a final glance at the desk, the candle, and the flowers, small, deliberate gestures that had transformed fear and uncertainty into reassurance and healing. The shadowy visitor was gone, yet its presence lingered in the soft warmth, the delicate light, and the echo of gentle connection that filled the room. With a deep, steady breath, Evelyn continued her rounds, carrying with her the knowledge that empathy could bridge worlds, that care could heal both the living and the lingering, and that even in quiet, shadowed corridors, light and reassurance could always find a way to shine. The hospital night deepened around Evelyn as she moved quietly down the long, narrow corridors of the old wing. The amber glow of the overhead lights reflected softly off the polished linoleum, their illumination gentle and almost meditative. Yet, beneath this calm veneer, the air seemed to thrum with subtle layered whispers, an unseen chorus that grew more distinct with each step she took. At first, she thought it was a trick of her imagination, the quiet hum of machinery, the soft echo of her own footsteps. But then the voices intertwined, overlapping in a delicate symphony of sound. Some murmured words of gratitude, others whispered fears and regrets. The tone was not threatening, but there was an undeniable depth to the presence surrounding her, a tangible sensation of many unseen beings sharing the same space. Evelyn felt simultaneously enveloped and small, a participant in a chorus that existed beyond sight. Shadows along the corridor walls began to shift in subtle synchrony with the whispers. Light flickered from monitors and machines, casting intertwined shapes across the floor like dancers performing an elegant, otherworldly ballet. The motion was hypnotic, mesmerizing, and a little uncanny. Evelyn's heartbeat quickened, not in fear but in heightened awareness. Each flicker of light, each delicate whisper, felt like a gentle pulse from the building itself, an acknowledgement of lives once lived, stories once told, and presence once felt. She paused near the nurse's station, leaning lightly against the counter as the whispers grew more layered. Names repeated softly in the air, fragments of conversations. A mother asking about her child, a patient expressing gratitude for a kind word, someone calling for a loved one who was no longer there. The overlap created a texture of sound both eerie and soothing, as though the hospital had become a living instrument resonating with the collective memory of those who had passed through its halls. Evelyn's fingers brushed against a small chart on the counter. She felt the residual warmth of human touch even though the room was empty. A monitor flickered in a slow, rhythmic pattern, almost like a heartbeat echoing through the space. She realized the whispers and shadows were following a cadence, subtle yet deliberate, an auditory tapestry that seemed to reach into the very marrow of her consciousness. The doctor felt herself becoming acutely aware of the multiplicity of presences around her. Some were tender, some sorrowful, others playful in their lingering energy. One particularly vivid shadow flickered near a wheelchair, its outline soft but unmistakably human, and Evelyn felt the briefest brush of wind against her cheek, as though a spirit had passed close enough to acknowledge her. She shivered slightly, not from fear, but from the profound intimacy of the moment. She began to walk slowly, letting the rhythm of the whispers guide her steps. With every stride, she sensed a subtle connection to the lives the hospital had cradled for decades. The gentle horror of being surrounded by unseen presences was counterbalanced by the comforting realization that these spirits were not hostile. They were curious, seeking recognition, perhaps longing for closure or simply offering their presence in a quiet acknowledgement of continuity and remembrance. Evelyn closed her eyes for a moment, inhaling the antiseptic-tinged night air. In her mind's eye, she saw hundreds of faint, shimmering outlines, moving like threads woven through the hospital's architecture. The chorus swelled and softened in unpredictable patterns, sometimes overlapping in harmony, sometimes brushing against discordant notes that made the hairs on her arms rise. It was an auditory dance, mesmerizing and slightly unnerving, yet wrapped in a blanket of calm that only came from understanding and empathy. A small, gentle sound caught her attention. A faint, singular heartbeat echoed from a monitor in an empty room. It aligned perfectly with the rhythm of the whispers, creating a pulse that seemed to anchor the chorus around her. Evelyn realized that the hospital, in its quiet, nocturnal state, had become a vessel for the memories, emotions, and lingering energies of countless souls. She felt privileged to witness this secret concert, a confluence of life, death, and remembrance that she could sense but not fully grasp. Then faintly, a whisper called her name, soft and melodic. She turned instinctively, but the corridor remained empty. Shadows twined and flickered around her, and the overlapping whispers continued, as if acknowledging her presence in their realm. The effect was both eerie and profoundly moving, a delicate reminder that connection transcends the visible, that life and memory leave impressions that linger, and that empathy can bridge the gap between worlds. Evelyn moved onward, allowing herself to be guided by the cadence of the chorus. Every step deepened her awareness, every flicker of light and whispering voice threading a sense of connection through her being. The gentle horror of the scene was balanced by the reassurance that she was not alone, that the spirits were not threatening, and that even in the dark corridors of the night, presence, attention, and care could create profound comfort. By the time she reached the end of the hallway, Evelyn felt a mixture of awe, reverence, and calm anticipation. The unseen chorus had introduced her to a deeper understanding of the hospital's history, of lives that had brushed against her own in subtle, invisible ways, and of the delicate balance between fear, empathy, and healing. She exhaled, letting the soundscape fade gently into silence, carrying with her the knowledge that the night was alive with stories yet untold, waiting for recognition, understanding, and quiet care. The ER felt heavier now, though the amber lights continued their steady, almost meditative glow. Evelyn's footsteps echoed softly against the polished floors. There was a strange rhythm beneath it all, as if the hospital itself had become aware of her presence, attuning to her heartbeat and breathing. The whispers of the unseen chorus persisted, now more layered and intimate, brushing against her consciousness in ways that felt both familiar and unsettling. As she rounded a corner near the old patient rooms, Evelyn froze. One shadow lingered differently, distinct from the others, solid yet ethereal, a presence that seemed to pulse with a quiet insistence. At first she couldn't place it, but as her eyes adjusted, a wave of recognition swept through her. The figure's outline, the subtle tilt of its head, the faint luminescence around it. It resembled someone she had loved deeply and lost long ago. Her chest tightened. Fear, grief, and an aching warmth collided inside her simultaneously. The whispers of other spirits faded, leaving only the soft, almost imperceptible murmur of the figure standing before her. Evelyn's throat tightened. She wanted to look away, to dismiss it as imagination. Yet her empathy, honed over countless nights in the hospital, rooted her in place. The figure did not move threateningly. Instead, it radiated a quiet familiarity, a gentle pull that invited her to acknowledge what she had long avoided: the pain of her own unresolved loss. Memories surged unbidden, the laughter shared in sunlit rooms, quiet conversations and moments of stillness, the sudden absence that had left a void in her heart. The figure's presence mirrored these recollections, echoing them in subtle movements. A flicker of light along the corridor, a gentle sway that mimicked a familiar gesture. Evelyn shivered, not from fear but from the exquisite tenderness of seeing someone she had loved reflected in a spectral form. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached forward, unsure if the motion was for herself or for the figure. I've missed you," she whispered, her voice blending with the faint hum of the monitors. The figure shimmered brighter in response, an almost imperceptible smile forming in the soft luminescence. It was not the person she had lost, but an echo, a reminder that love and memory persist, even across boundaries unseen. Evelyn realized that the presence was both a challenge and a gift. The fear of confronting her own grief was interlaced with warmth, a sense of release that she had denied herself for too long. Each movement, each faint whisper, guided her to sit with her emotions rather than flee from them. The ER, normally a place of clinical sterility, had transformed into a sacred space for reflection, healing, and the gentle confrontation of what lingered in her heart. The figure seemed to lean slightly closer, almost imperceptibly, and Evelyn felt a warmth like a hand resting lightly on her shoulder. It was a gesture of reassurance, a bridge between memory and presence, and it brought tears she had long held back to the surface. She let them fall silently, each one a release of sorrow, each one a balm on the hidden ache of her loss. The gentle horror of seeing a ghostly reflection of a loved one was softened by the profound tenderness of connection, a paradox that left her trembling and soothed at the same time. Whispers from the other spirits returned, now surrounding her with a delicate chorus of empathy and understanding. Their presence felt supportive, as though guiding her through this confrontation, reinforcing the message that grief, memory, and care are shared experiences. Evelyn realized she was not alone, neither in the hospital nor in her emotional journey. The spectral echo before her had catalyzed an opening, a path toward catharsis she had never expected to find amidst the flickering lights and quiet corridors. She took a slow, deliberate breath, allowing the memories to mingle with the present, letting both fear and warmth coexist in her chest. The figure shimmered brighter for a moment, and she felt an unspoken acknowledgement, a gentle nod across the divide. That release, understanding, and acceptance were possible even in the midst of the unknown. Then, with a subtle ripple, the figure began to fade, leaving behind a lingering warmth that settled deep within her heart. Evelyn exhaled, a mixture of relief, awe, and emotional release washing over her. The chorus of whispers softened into gentle murmurs, the shadows along the corridor stretching and retracting like slow, rhythmic breaths. She realized that the night had gifted her a rare experience, the ability to confront her personal grief through the mirror of a spirit's reflection, to feel both the weight and the lightness of memory, and to begin the quiet work of emotional healing. For the first time that night, she allowed herself a small, serene smile. The hospital corridors, bathed in amber light, no longer felt merely quiet. They felt alive with the lessons of presence, care, and connection. Fear and warmth, sorrow and release had merged into a single, profound understanding. That even in shadows and whispers, empathy could transform unease into gentle, lasting catharsis. Evelyn moved onward, her steps soft, measured, carrying with her a newfound sense of inner peace amidst the lingering chorus of unseen voices. The corridor felt quieter now, yet there was a subtle, lingering vibration in the air, the faint echo of spirits that had shared their stories, their presence hovering delicately like a soft mist. Evelyn paused, letting her eyes adjust to the gentle amber glow, watching shadows stretch and contract along the walls, their movements now slower, less urgent. She sensed that the emotional turbulence of the night had reached its peak, and that a moment of calm could be offered to all those who lingered. Drawing a deep, steady breath, she lowered her hands to her sides and began to speak softly. Her words were simple, rhythmic, almost like a lullaby. You are seen, you are remembered, you are at peace. Each syllable carried warmth, weaving through the air and brushing against the edges of the luminous figures that remained. The spirits responded in kind, their whispers softening, harmonizing into a gentle hum that seemed to wrap around Evelyn, the walls and the floor in a comforting embrace. She moved slowly down the corridor, her steps measured, allowing the soft cadence of her voice to guide the fading shadows. Occasionally she hummed quietly, a soothing melody that mingled with the whispers, encouraging them to linger just enough to feel acknowledged, then gradually recede. The interplay of sound, light, and movement was hypnotic, creating a delicate rhythm that felt like breathing itself. The shadows, once sharp and unpredictable, now glided gracefully along the walls, their edges blurred, almost feather-like in their motion. Each spirit seemed to respond to her presence, to the intention behind her words, slowly dissolving into soft, radiant traces that hovered for a brief moment before fading entirely. Evelyn felt a deep sense of connection, a quiet reassurance that her care and attention had helped these lingering presences find a small measure of release. Her gaze fell upon the candle she had lit earlier in the ER, its flame steady and unwavering. It was a simple anchor, yet it seemed to hold the room together, stabilizing the gentle luminescence of the spirits and blending seamlessly with the warm glow of the overhead lights. Evelyn realized that healing in this space was not dramatic or forceful. It was quiet, subtle, and cumulative. Each word, each gesture of empathy, each acknowledgement of presence contributed to the transformation of fear into peace. She walked toward the old patient rooms, softly touching the surfaces, arranging the small items left behind, blankets folded, notes smoothed, a single toy placed carefully on a windowsill. These were gestures that needed no words, yet they communicated the same message. You are remembered, you are valued, you are at peace. The shadows shimmered in response, a final acknowledgement before retreating entirely into the gentle night. The hospital, which had been alive with quiet tension and layered whispers, now felt settled. The faint hum of machines, the soft flicker of light, and the subtle scent of antiseptic, mixed with faint floral notes from the arranged flowers, all combined to create an atmosphere of calm, reassurance, and gentle reflection. Evelyn stood in the middle of the corridor, absorbing the silence that now carried warmth instead of unease. Her own heartbeat, steady and soft, seemed to synchronize with the residual rhythm of the night. For the first time in hours, she allowed herself to release the last traces of fear and tension, inhaling deeply and exhaling with a sense of relief. The unseen chorus had quieted, the shadows had receded. What remained was a profound sense of calm, an understanding that even fleeting presences could leave lasting impressions of comfort and connection. Finally, Evelyn walked toward the exit of the ward, pausing to glance back one last time. The corridor was empty now, yet the warmth and soft luminescence lingered like the afterglow of a sunset. She knew that the spirits had found their small measure of peace, and in turn, she had been allowed to confront her own fears, offer comfort, and witness the quiet miracle of gentle resolution. With a slow, deliberate step, she exited the ward, carrying with her the sense that the night had been transformed. Not through dramatic displays of fear or spectacle, but through empathy, care, and the unwavering attention to presence. The hospital's quiet heartbeat remained, steady and comforting, a reminder that even in the deepest shadows, light, reassurance, and healing can always be found. The hospital night had deepened into something almost sacred, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Evelyn moved slowly through the familiar corridors, each step deliberate, attuned to the subtle vibrations that hummed in the air. The amber lights flickered gently, casting warm reflections across the polished floors, while shadows stretched and swayed like long-forgotten memories reaching out to her. From the far end of the ward, the whispers began to swell. At first, they were soft, indistinct fragments of speech, mere brushstrokes of sound against the canvas of silence. But as she advanced, the murmurs merged into a symphony, a chorus of countless voices, echoing together with a rhythm both unsettling and mesmerizing. Names, small pleasantries, final words of gratitude, murmured regrets, all layered atop each other, creating a soundscape that felt almost tangible. Evelyn's chest tightened as she allowed herself to absorb it fully. The weight of accumulated sorrow, hope, and gratitude pressed gently upon her spirit, a reminder of lives intertwined with the hospital's very structure. The shadows responded in tandem. They no longer simply flickered along walls or under doors. They moved in waves, rolling gently, undulating like water stirred by some invisible tide. In their motion, hints of faint color appeared, soft blues, silvers, and subtle greens that shimmered like an aurora reflected across the sterile surfaces of the ER. It was as if the whispers themselves were painting the air, giving shape and dimension to the emotions they carried. Evelyn paused, captivated by the living artistry unfolding around her, a scene that was at once eerie, beautiful, and profoundly moving. She felt the pulse of the hospital's history pressing against her consciousness. Each footstep she took was mirrored by the rhythm of the whispers, each breath harmonized with the silent waves of light and shadow. The chorus was overwhelming, yet instead of fear, it brought an acute sense of empathy, a deep resonance with every life that had passed through these halls. She realized that she was both witness and participant, a conduit for these lingering presences, seeking acknowledgement, comfort, and release. Evelyn's fingers brushed along the metal railing beside her, and she could almost feel the vibrations of emotion traveling up her arms. The whispers crescendoed into a gentle roar, voices overlapping in a delicate cacophony that filled every corner of the ER. It was a sensation that could have been terrifying in a less understanding mind, but Evelyn's heart had grown accustomed to the presence of spirits, to the interplay of fear, curiosity, and empathy. She inhaled deeply, letting the layered voices wash over her, allowing herself to be fully present, fully attentive. Then, amidst the chorus, one voice became distinct. Soft but insistent, it called her name, threading through the myriad of murmurs like a single silver note in a symphony. Evelyn turned instinctively, though the space was empty and her heart skipped. She realized with both awe and a touch of fear that the chorus was conscious of her presence, responding to her attention, weaving her into their ongoing narrative. The waves of shadow shifted again, this time forming shapes almost recognizable. A child's hand reaching toward hers, a patient's profile reflected in the light. the outline of someone bending to speak words lost long ago. The colors shimmered more vividly, flowing like liquid ribbons of emotion, the movement slow and hypnotic. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. She could feel their histories pressing into her awareness, the fears they had held, the gratitude they had felt, the regrets they carried into this liminal space. Yet even in this overwhelming presence, there was a sense of order, a pattern that emerged from the chaos. The whispers, the waves of shadow, and the glimmering aurora-like colors formed a delicate choreography, as if the hospital itself had become a living orchestra, and she, its attentive conductor, was helping to harmonize the energies within it. She moved forward cautiously, each step a negotiation between awe, reverence, and the slight thrill of the unknown. A gentle pulse began to synchronize with her heartbeat, subtle at first, then gradually more pronounced. It came from the monitors, the machinery, the unseen currents of air, but it felt alive, responsive, as if the entire hospital recognized her as a participant in this nocturnal symphony. Evelyn closed her eyes, letting herself merge with the rhythm, feeling her own fears dissolve into the collective energy of remembrance. The shadows leaned in slightly, the aurora of colors flowing around her like protective arms, and the whispers softened, layering into a gentle, melodic resonance. Within this overwhelming presence, Evelyn became acutely aware of a single fragile tension, a sense of unfinished business, a lingering story waiting to be honored. Her hands instinctively reached for the small objects left in the corridor, folded blankets, notes, toys, personal effects, and she adjusted them with care, offering acknowledgement to the lives these items represented. Each gesture sent a ripple through the chorus, and the voices softened in response, a faint sigh of relief that mingled with the ambient hum of the hospital. And then, a moment of clarity broke through. Evelyn sensed that the spirits were not just echoes of the past, they were guides, teachers, and witnesses to her own journey. The fear that had once accompanied their presence was replaced with gratitude, a calm understanding that she was not alone, that attention, empathy, and acknowledgement could bridge the gap between life and memory. The chorus, immense and layered, became a gentle current, carrying with it both the weight of sorrow and the relief of connection. Evelyn opened her eyes, taking in the full sweep of the ER. Shadows still moved in subtle waves, colors shimmered faintly like liquid light, and the whispers had settled into a soothing murmur. Her chest felt lighter, her mind calmer, as if the act of witnessing, participating, and offering gentle care had transformed the night itself. The hospital had revealed its heartbeat, and she had been allowed to feel it, to honor it, to merge with it in a quiet, profound communion. With one final breath, Evelyn exhaled slowly, letting the crescendo of whispers ebb into soft, melodic traces that lingered in the mind rather than pressing on the senses. She felt the accumulated sorrow, hope, and gratitude of countless patients fold into a single gentle sensation, a resonance of life, memory, and peace that would accompany her long after the night ended. For the first time, the ER felt wholly alive, not with fear, but with quiet, luminous understanding, a sanctuary of presence and empathy in the darkness. The whispers had shifted, no longer a diffuse chorus, but an almost intentional rhythm, like a heartbeat guiding Evelyn through the dimly lit ER. Each step she took felt measured, deliberate, as though the hospital itself was bending time and space to align with her movements. The amber lights flickered gently overhead, casting long, warm shadows that seemed to stretch toward her, welcoming her into a place she could neither see fully nor fully comprehend. Evelyn paused near an empty examination room, drawn by a subtle shift in the chorus. The whispers became distinct words, phrases threading together like a fragmented conversation she had once overheard in her earliest medical days. Names, numbers, a sequence of instructions, all blending into something that felt urgent, yet deeply calming. The presence before her grew more tangible, a soft luminescence solidifying into a figure that hovered in front of her, almost as if the air itself had taken shape. Her heart quickened, not in fear, but in anticipation. The figure's form was gentle, its outline shimmering with warmth rather than menace. Evelyn felt a quiet, insistent pull, as if the spirits were guiding her gaze toward a specific area in the room. On a small metal table lay a notebook she didn't remember seeing before, its pages open to a half-completed chart and scattered notes. Something about the arrangement seemed purposeful, intentional. As she leaned closer, the whispers coalesced into clear sentences, urging her attention to subtle details she might otherwise overlook. Look here. Note the anomaly. Compare the readings. Follow the pattern. Each phrase aligned with fragments of memory and knowledge she had accumulated over years of practice. A pattern emerged that she had overlooked before. A connection between past patients, treatment protocols, and an unresolved case that had haunted her for months. Evelyn felt a shiver pass through her, not of fear, but of awe. The presence was intensely real, more vivid than any previous apparition, yet there was no threat, only guidance. It was as if the spirits had been waiting, orchestrating this moment, offering the culmination of their collective experience to illuminate a breakthrough she had been too focused or too hesitant to see. Her mind raced, aligning the whispered clues with her medical knowledge, the pieces of the puzzle slotting together with fluid precision. A gentle warmth spread across her chest as she realized the magnitude of the revelation. This was not a ghost story of loss alone. It was a lesson, a bridge between the past and the present, between the departed and the living. The spirits had offered her insight, not only to solve a clinical mystery, but to honor the experiences of countless patients who had come before. The whispers were a channel, a repository of accumulated care and attention, transformed into guidance that transcended time. Evelyn reached for the notes with trembling hands, following the instructions she had only just begun to comprehend. As she cross-referenced the charts and compared data points, the luminescent presence swirled gently around her, observing but not intruding. Shadows moved fluidly along the walls, light glimmering across the floor like soft waves of color, creating a surreal sense of motion and life in the otherwise still room. The chorus of whispers had softened, now harmonizing into a melodic undertone, reinforcing the sense of reassurance and clarity. Her thoughts began to clear as she connected the dots. A subtle adjustment in treatment, a minor alteration in protocol, and a previously unresolved anomaly in patient care, all illuminated by the guidance of the unseen chorus. Fear had transformed into enlightenment. The gentle horror of the night, of the present so vivid and unreal, had become an instrument of revelation, a bridge between her own understanding and the accumulated wisdom of the past. Evelyn exhaled slowly, a mixture of awe, relief, and profound gratitude washing over her. She realized that the spirits had been reaching out not to frighten her, but to awaken something within her. The recognition that life, death, memory, and care are intertwined in ways subtle yet powerful. Each patient's whisper, each lingering shadow, each flicker of color in the ER's quiet corridors had been a guidepost leading her to this very moment. A convergence of insight, empathy, and healing. The figure shimmered brighter for a heartbeat, then leaned toward her as if to impart a final reassurance. In that instant, Evelyn understood. The hospital itself, with all its echoes and shadows, had become a teacher. The gentle horror she had felt, the intensity of the presence, the almost tangible weight of the whispers, had not been to unsettle her, but to push her into clarity, to allow her to grasp an insight she would never have found alone. As the figure slowly dissipated, blending into the soft, ambient glow of the ER, Evelyn felt the room exhale with her. The chorus of whispers faded into a gentle hum, a melodic resonance that lingered at the edges of her consciousness. The shadows retreated, leaving behind a space that felt both luminous and serene, filled with the quiet knowledge of lives remembered and lessons shared. Evelyn stood in the middle of the room, a deep sense of fulfillment settling into her chest. The breakthrough she had been guided toward was more than scientific. It was emotional, moral, and profoundly human. The spirits had not only illuminated a solution, but had reminded her of the delicate balance between care, memory, and presence. In the stillness that followed, she felt an intimate connection to all those who had whispered, guiding her gently through the unknown, and leaving her with the comforting realization that even in moments of uncertainty, guidance and healing could be found in the softest of voices. She exhaled once more, a serene smile brushing her lips. The hospital, the shadows, the whispers, they had all been a mirror of the human heart, intricate, fragile, capable of profound connection and insight. And in that quiet, luminous night, Evelyn understood that fear and enlightenment, gentle horror and profound healing could coexist, weaving together a story that was at once comforting, awe-inspiring, and gently transformative. Evelyn stood quietly in the center of the dimly lit ER, the weight of the night's revelation still settling within her. The whispers had faded to soft, melodic hums, lingering like the final notes of a lullaby. Shadows that had once moved in waves now hovered faintly as if waiting, patient and expectant. The air felt thick with a delicate stillness, each breath she took resonating with the calm presence of those who had been guiding her. On a small metal table lay the final pieces of her work, the old patient file that had been the source of so many lingering questions, a folded letter she had penned with careful, reverent words, and a tiny token left behind by the spirits themselves. A small, worn photograph, its edges frayed, but its meaning profound. Evelyn's fingers hovered above these items, feeling the weight not of objects, but of memory, care, and unfinished stories finally ready to be honored. With deliberate slowness, she opened the file, letting the pages fall softly onto the table. Her eyes traced the handwriting, the faded notes, the echoes of past lives that had once filled these rooms with laughter, fear, and hope. Then she gently placed the letter atop the file, folding it carefully, sealing it with the quiet intention of acknowledgement and closure. Every gesture was measured, almost ceremonial, a symbolic act of release not only for the spirits but for herself. A letting go of tension, sorrow, and unanswered questions that had clung to the night. As her hand rested upon the items, the room responded. The shadows shimmered gently, their edges blurring into the soft, ambient light. Faint colors that had once pulsed like auroras now settled into warm tones. Honeyed amber, soft rose, and gentle golden hues, the whispering chorus had dissolved, replaced by a quiet resonance, a comforting vibration that seemed to hum through the floor and walls, carrying with it the essence of gratitude, acknowledgement, and finality. Evelyn exhaled slowly, feeling a profound sense of awe. The spirits began to vanish one by one, their forms dissipating like morning mist catching the first rays of sun. A child's hand lingered for a heartbeat longer. A familiar smile flickered in the corner of her vision. A soft, warm glow pulsed where an elder patient had once whispered their story. Each presence left an imprint, a subtle warmth that remained in the air. A gentle reminder that they had been seen, heard, and honored. The room, once alive with motion and whispers, now lay bathed in a soft, encompassing light. It was neither sterile nor empty. Instead, it radiated a quiet warmth, a serene acknowledgement of lives touched and stories completed. Evelyn's chest felt light yet full, as if she were carrying within her the essence of every soul who had lingered here. A gentle sorrow brushed against her heart, tender and unintrusive, a reminder of the fragility and preciousness of life. She closed her eyes, allowing herself to absorb the transformation fully. The fear that had accompanied the night's events had melted into something profound, a mixture of calm, reverence, and emotional release. Her hands rested lightly upon the table as though physically anchoring herself to this moment, the symbolic act of closure echoing within every fiber of her being. The hospital no longer felt like a place haunted by shadows, but a sanctuary where memory, care, and acknowledgement converged to create beauty in the quietest, most subtle ways. Evelyn rose slowly, taking in the soft luminescence that now filled the ward. The warmth of the light seemed to hug the walls and floors, wrapping the space in comfort. She could still sense faint traces of presence, but they were gentle, reassuring, and fleeting, like the soft exhalation of a breath long held. Every shadow that had once seemed a whisper of unease now carried a soft resonance of love, care, and peace. With a final glance at the table, Evelyn allowed herself a small, serene smile. She had completed the act of release, bridging the gap between life and memory, fear and understanding, presence and absence. The spirits had departed, leaving a room that glowed with quiet dignity and gentle warmth. There was a profound sense of completion in the air, a a silent acknowledgement that the work of empathy, care, and attention had been honored, and that healing, both for the living and the departed, had taken place. As she walked toward the exit of the ER, the floor beneath her feet seemed to hum softly, a final vibration of acknowledgement. The hospital had returned to a state of serene stillness, yet it was enriched by the echoes of what had transpired, a space transformed by understanding, compassion, and the quiet magic of presence. Evelyn felt a calmness she had not known at the start of the night, a gentle settling of the heart that made the ordinary fluorescent glow of the ward feel almost sacred. She paused at the doorway, taking one last, deliberate breath. The act of release had completed not only the night's journey, but her own inner transformation. Awe, calm, gentle sorrow, and deep peace mingled in her chest, a complex but soothing tapestry of emotion. The hospital, once a place of quiet tension and soft echoes, now rested in luminous tranquility. Evelyn stepped out, carrying with her the profound understanding that acknowledgement, empathy, and gentle care could transform fear into peace, shadows into light, and uncertainty into clarity. The first rays of dawn crept slowly through the tall hospital windows, brushing the corridors with a soft, golden light. The warmth of the morning wrapped around the stillness, turning the polished floors into liquid amber and casting gentle, elongated shadows that swayed with the faint morning breeze. Every surface, from the metal railings to the faded paint on the walls, glowed with a quiet intimacy, as if the building itself had exhaled a long-held breath of relief. Evelyn walked slowly down the main corridor, her steps light, almost reverent. The night's whispers had completely faded, leaving only the subtle hum of the morning. The gentle beep of distant monitors, the rustle of linens in an empty ward, and the faint whir of the ventilation system. The hospital, once a place of shadows and lingering presence, now felt like a sanctuary, touched by the soft hand of renewal. She paused near a window, sunlight spilling across her hands as she held them lightly against the glass. Outside, the world was waking. A soft breeze moved through the trees lining the hospital grounds, and the leaves danced with a gentle rustle, catching the sunlight like shards of gold. Birds called out from nearby branches, their songs clear and joyous, carrying a sense of freedom and continuity that contrasted sharply with the quiet intensity of the night. Evelyn let her mind drift back to the events she had witnessed. The whispers, the shadows, the faint auroras of light in the ER, all of it now felt like a tender memory, a gentle imprint on her consciousness. She realized that the night had not been about fear or dread, but about connection. Between the living and the departed, between memory and understanding, and most profoundly between her own heart and the echoes of countless lives that had passed through the hospital. Her chest felt lighter, her thoughts clearer. The lingering sorrow had softened into a profound empathy, a quiet recognition of the fragility and beauty of life. Every small gesture she had made during the night, the act of adjusting a blanket, leaving a note, honoring a token of memory, had become a thread in the tapestry of healing that now enveloped the hospital. Evelyn understood, with a depth that transcended words, that care was not only physical, but spiritual, emotional, and eternal. The morning light shifted across the corridors, catching the edges of doors, the railings, and the floors with a softness that almost felt deliberate, like the universe itself had decided to illuminate the hospital with gentle approval. Evelyn's gaze fell on the items she had left behind the night before. The old patient file, the folded letter, the tiny photograph. In the morning glow, they seemed to radiate warmth, as if the act of closure had imbued them with a quiet life of their own. She smiled softly, feeling the weight of responsibility lift from her shoulders, replaced by a sense of fulfillment and serenity. Walking further down the corridor, Evelyn noticed subtle signs that life continued around her. Nurses began their morning routines with quiet efficiency. Patients stirred in their rooms, and the soft sounds of care, footsteps, gentle conversations, the clinking of equipment, formed a harmonious backdrop to the glowing morning. The hospital felt alive, not in a bustling or chaotic way, but in a deeply intimate, vibrant sense. It was a living testament to the intertwining of presence and memory, action and reflection, fear and healing. She paused again, closing her eyes and inhaling deeply. The air carried a faint hint of antiseptic, tempered by the warmth of sunlight and the faint trace of flowers someone had placed in the waiting area. The combination of scents, light, and quiet movement created a sensory tapestry that calmed her mind and centered her spirit. Evelyn felt herself at home in this moment, fully aware, fully alive, and profoundly grateful for the lessons of the night. As she opened her eyes, she noticed something new, a soft shimmer of light where the shadows of the previous night had lingered. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it felt like a gentle acknowledgement, a silent message from the spirits who had guided her. They were gone, yet their presence remained in the warmth of the morning, in the calm heartbeat of the hospital, and in the subtle reverence that now seemed to fill every corridor. Evelyn's thoughts turned inward. She reflected on the moments of gentle horror, the whispers, the shadows, the unexpected movements of objects, and how they had transformed into experiences of healing, insight, and connection. She understood now that the night had been a mirror, showing her both the fragility and resilience of the human heart. The spirits had not frightened her. They had taught her to listen, to empathize, and to honor the unseen threads that connect life and memory. A sense of peace settled over her, deeper than she had ever felt in the quiet hours of the hospital. She realized that the night's journey had changed her, and that the healing she had facilitated for the lingering spirits had, in turn, healed her own spirit. Each patient, each whisper, each fleeting shadow had contributed to a profound understanding of empathy, love, and presence. And in the soft, golden light of morning, Evelyn felt the hospital itself breathe with her, a living sanctuary of memory, care, and gentle illumination. She stepped toward the main doors, pausing at the threshold to take in the full panorama of the hospital bathed in dawn. The trees outside shimmered in the early light, the air smelled faintly of earth and promise, and the world beyond seemed both familiar and infinitely tender. Evelyn's heart swelled with a quiet joy, a recognition that the night's journey, with all its subtle terror and gentle revelation, had led her to a place of true calm and understanding. With a final glance back at the corridors, now suffused with soft morning light and quiet warmth, she allowed herself a small, serene smile. The hospital, the spirits, the whispers, they had left their imprint on her soul, a reminder that healing, presence, and empathy transcend time, fear, and even the boundaries between life and death. Evelyn stepped forward, carrying with her the profound calm of the dawn, a heart full of gratitude, and a spirit renewed by the gentle, luminous lessons of the night. Evelyn lingered in the sunlit corridor, the soft morning light painting the walls in hues of honey and rose. The hospital felt alive with quiet energy. Every small sound, a distant murmur, the rustle of linens, the faint squeak of a rolling cart, imbued with warmth rather than urgency. The events of the night settled around her like a comforting cloak, and yet, in the gentle hush, she sensed that one final presence remained. A whisper, faint but distinct, reached her ears, threading delicately through the hum of morning activity. It was not alarming. It carried the softness of a breeze brushing across leaves, the serenity of water rippling in a quiet pond. Evelyn paused, closing her eyes, and let the sound envelop her. It spoke her name, softly, reverently, as if drawing her attention not to something fearful, but to something profoundly meaningful. The words of the whisper unfolded slowly, almost imperceptibly at first. Gratitude, acknowledgement, and guidance intertwined in a cadence that felt both ancient and immediate. Thank you. Your care honors us. Continue to listen. Continue to heal. Each syllable resonated deep within her chest, a gentle vibration that seemed to align with her heartbeat. The voice was not of a single spirit, but a convergence of all the lives she had touched, all the presences she had acknowledged, and all the lessons she had absorbed through the night. Evelyn's eyes opened to the corridor bathed in sunlight, and she saw nothing unusual. No figure, no shadow, no flicker of light. But the whisper persisted, subtle yet insistent. She realized with a shiver that was both thrilling and soothing that the presence did not require a form to exist. Its essence lingered in the air, in the warmth of the morning, in the memory of the hospital itself. It was a reminder that connection does not end with sight or sound. It endures in perception, empathy, and the acknowledgement of what came before. The final whisper carried with it an unexpected clarity, guiding Evelyn's thoughts toward her work, her patients, and her own life. It was advice wrapped in reassurance, a soft encouragement to continue her practice with gentleness, attentiveness, and humility. She felt the culmination of all the lessons she had received, the whispers, the shadows, the subtle hints of light, converge into a singular understanding that life, memory, and care are continuous, flowing through every action, every choice, and every act of listening. Her heart swelled with a mixture of awe and gentle sorrow, a recognition of the fragility and beauty of existence. The whispers of the night had taught her not only about the lingering spirits of the hospital, but about her own capacity for empathy and presence. Each step she had taken, each note she had written, each moment of acknowledgement had been a thread in a tapestry larger than herself, one that intertwined the living and the departed, the seen and the unseen. The whisper lingered for a moment longer, a soft, ethereal murmur that seemed to embrace her completely. And then, as subtly as it had arrived, it faded, leaving a profound silence that was luminous in its tranquility. Evelyn opened her eyes fully, noticing the way sunlight caught on the rails and floors, how shadows now appeared softer, kinder, as if the building itself had absorbed the essence of the final farewell. The room, once a vessel of whispers and shadows, now resonated with a calm, vibrant energy, suffused with warmth, healing, and quiet awe. A small smile touched Evelyn's lips, gentle and reflective. She understood in the depth of her being that this final whisper was not an ending, but a continuation, a bridge between night and day, past and present, loss and hope. It was a message that life and memory are never truly gone. They persist in subtle forms, guiding, nurturing, and inspiring those willing to perceive them with care and attentiveness. She took a slow, deliberate breath, feeling a ripple of peace travel through her chest. The hospital no longer seemed simply a place of work or memories, but a living, breathing sanctuary where healing, both tangible and intangible, had taken root. Every corner of the ward glowed softly in the morning light, as if acknowledging the invisible thread of connection woven between all the lives it had held. Evelyn knew she had been part of something larger than herself, something quietly sacred, and that understanding imbued her with both humility and serenity. In the stillness that followed, Evelyn allowed herself one final reflection on the events of the past night. The shadows, whispers, and fleeting presences had guided her to empathy, insight, and renewal. The final whisper, now gone, had left behind a resonance of gratitude and guidance that she would carry into every patient encounter, every decision, and every quiet moment of reflection. It was a soft, luminous lesson that care, attention, and connection are never wasted, and that even in silence, life continues to teach and heal. She stepped forward, letting the sunlight wash over her as she moved through the hospital corridors. The warmth of morning, the subtle colors, the gentle rhythm of life all seemed infused with the lingering wisdom of the final whisper. Evelyn's heart felt unburdened, yet enriched, filled with a calm awareness of the continuity of life, memory, and the subtle, ever-present capacity for healing. The faintest chill brushed her spine, a gentle shiver of awe, and she smiled, knowing that the whisper's message would forever accompany her, a quiet guide in the luminous interplay of shadows and light. The hospital exhaled in tandem with her, a serene sanctuary now quiet, bathed in gold and alive with possibility. Evelyn understood that the night's journey had not been an anomaly but a profound teaching, one she would carry forward. The final whisper had been both farewell and blessing, leaving her with a deep sense of peace, awe, and quiet satisfaction. In that moment, she felt the full weight and beauty of connection, the delicate interplay of life and memory, and the gentle, enduring power of presence. And as the morning stretched forward, sunlight spilling across every surface, Evelyn stepped into her day renewed, her spirit healed, her heart full, and her mind open to the continuous, luminous whispers of life. Evelyn stepped slowly through the main doors of the hospital, the soft morning light washing over her like a gentle caress. Each breath she took felt lighter, fuller, as if the night's weight had been lifted and replaced with the calm warmth of understanding. The corridors behind her, once alive with whispers and shadows, now lay serene and luminous. The faint traces of the spirit's presence lingered, not in fear, but as a subtle, comforting memory, a quiet hum that seemed woven into the very walls themselves. She paused on the steps outside, feeling the first chill of morning air on her skin, but it was not biting or uncomfortable. Instead, it carried a freshness that blended seamlessly with the lingering warmth in her heart. The hospital, towering behind her, no longer felt like a place of uncertainty or unease. Its windows glimmered like softly polished amber, reflecting the sky's pale gold, and every brick seemed suffused with the energy of lives acknowledged, care offered, and lessons learned. Evelyn's thoughts drifted back to the night's experiences. The whispers, the shadows, the flickering lights, and the fleeting forms that had taught her so much. Each encounter, once tinged with subtle tension and gentle fear, had transformed into a thread in a tapestry of healing. She understood now that the spirits had not been there to frighten her, but to guide her, to show her the depth of empathy and the quiet power of presence. The final whisper, still echoing softly in her memory, had left her with a sense of continuity, a reminder that life, memory, and care extend beyond what we can see. Walking down the path leading away from the hospital, Evelyn noticed small details she had missed before. The gentle sway of the trees, the soft flutter of leaves catching the sunlight, the distant song of birds beginning their morning chorus. Each moment felt like an echo of the lessons she had received, a rhythm of life, of patience, and of the unseen connections that persist when we open our hearts to them. A calm joy filled her chest, mingling with a tender sorrow that was no longer heavy but soothing. She thought of the child who had left her a small token, the elderly patient whose story had finally found resolution, and the countless unnamed presences that had lingered long enough to teach her about care, attention, and gentle empathy. In the quiet of the morning, she felt the profound truth of those lessons, that healing is not always about fixing, but about witnessing, honoring, and embracing what has passed with respect and love. Evelyn's gaze returned to the hospital, now bathed in full daylight. It seemed almost to breathe with her, calm and steady, alive with memory yet devoid of unease. The corridors, once alive with whispers, now hummed only with the quiet energy of life continuing. She could imagine the rooms filled with soft sunlight, the beds empty yet still imbued with the warmth of stories lived and acknowledged. Every shadow, every corner, every glimmer of light now held a subtle resonance of peace, a reminder that even when spirits depart, their lessons and gratitude endure in the spaces they touch. A gentle shiver ran down her spine, not of fear but of awe. It was the lingering echo of the final whisper, the sensation of having glimpsed something beyond ordinary perception, yet understood fully in its quiet significance. She smiled softly, feeling the layers of tension, curiosity, and tender apprehension dissolve completely, replaced by a warm, unshakable calm. The gentle horror of the night had been transformed into something entirely serene, leaving a residue of reverence and quiet joy. Evelyn continued her walk, feeling each step grounded yet buoyant, as if carrying the lessons of the spirits with her. She thought of her patients, of her colleagues, and of the countless small acts of care that ripple outward in ways we cannot always see. The night had reminded her that life is fragile, that presence matters, and that even in moments of uncertainty, empathy and attention create lasting impact. As she reached the edge of the hospital grounds, she turned back once more. The building stood in tranquil majesty, glowing softly in the morning sun, every window reflecting a story of closure, every shadow softened into memory. No whispers lingered, yet the rooms felt alive, imbued with the gentle pulse of remembrance. Evelyn understood that the peace she now carried was not only her own, but a resonance of every life she had honored, the culmination of connection, acknowledgement, and healing. With a final deep breath, she stepped fully into the morning, her heart light, her mind calm, and her spirit imbued with the warmth of the night's lessons. The quiet awe of the journey remained with her, a gentle hum of insight, empathy, and grace that would continue to guide her every step. And in that still, luminous moment, Evelyn felt the profound satisfaction of lasting peace, a serenity born from courage, compassion, and the subtle, enduring presence of lives remembered. The hospital behind her rested in soft harmony, whispers gone, shadows softened, yet alive with the tender memory of care. The night had ended, but its quiet teaching remained eternal, a reminder that even the subtlest presence can leave a mark, and that healing, gentle, profound, and enduring, resides in every act of understanding and empathy. Evelyn walked forward, carrying with her a calm certainty, a heart full of warmth, and the lasting echo of a journey both gentle and unforgettable.